This call is now being recorded. This call is now being transcribed. All right. Before we do, I think before we get into today's session, maybe we can do a recap of last week's session. So, who remembers anything we covered in the last week? So we can do a round table again. You guys can nominate the person who goes first. I am very comfortable with silence, so tutanyamaza hapa mpaka mtu aanze.
Are we nominating someone? Because I definitely would nominate Peter.
Peter, you've been nominated. And then you'll pass it to the next person.
So I remember we discussed types of markets. We did the unworkable market, unavoidable, urgent, and underserved. So yeah. Next, Carol.
For me, I think the thing I can point out is the adverts you showed us. I think that was my key takeaway in terms of ensuring that you are communicating the value you're offering and the vision you hold as a company. And I also think we can talk about Sandy. You know, the company was closed shop, I think, on the 8th of this month, 8th or 7th. That's when I saw the TechCrunch article. So you can talk about it because it also ties in with what you talked about last year, bringing solutions to market that are offering value, not just, bringing products to market. And then, yeah, I think that's what I can talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joy?
So please remind me, are we highlighting our takeout or what we expect today?
No, we're doing a recap of last week's session. So what you remember or your key takeaway from last week's session?
One liner that stuck with me like a bad disease. When you said, don't invest in what nobody is looking for. That was quite the biggest take home. But beyond that, I also love the issue about differentiation and distinctiveness, which again tied to that statement: don't invest in what nobody is looking for. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I can see I have a very engaged group of learners. Tuendelee hivyo. I can see people have already come up with their own case studies that we can look at. So let's see if we can get into that today as well. Sawa. Yeah, so you're very right. We started by saying that we want to have a focus on the product sense, which is more around understanding things like customer needs, market dynamics, and product opportunities, and being able to have like a clear understanding of the competitive landscape and the product landscape. Sawa, we looked at possible reasons why customers say no. Then we discussed a bit about the types of customers. We explored the concept of value. Tukaona kuna watu wanaoganga na nini gloves, kuna watu wanaoga na gunia. Yeah, and about the different set of markets. For example, if you want to solve a specific problems, the potential for you to make tangible revenue and tangible impact would essentially fall in these four buckets. We also did some looked at how to do competition through differentiation and distinctiveness. We looked at some examples. By the time we were closing up, we had started looking at product ideation and concept development. We explored Kune as an example. We also looked at how a market typically segments itself with people who are early adopters. So these are the guys who pay without having to do a lot of marketing on that end. Then there are people who are not really convinced of the offer. And then the largest share of the audience are people who you actually need to do some bit of convincing. We explored Safaricom and Kensel / Zain / Celtel / Airtel. And we also looked at their product vision and their journeys. So today, because we're still in the phase where we're trying to come up with the concepts of a product idea and also actually validate whether there is potential for us to make money in that sense. So I will start. All right. Who here knows what a value chain is?
I can try maybe like a flow of value chain, like a flow of processes from start to finish. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Caroline. Who else wants to also give it a try? Tutanyamaziana. Let me get one more. Peter Joy. Are you guys on the call?
Yeah, okay. For me, I'd say
Mm-hmm.
the addition of value from the product being a raw material.
Okay. We didn't get it very clearly, but I think I got the gist of it. So the process of converting a product from a raw material maybe to the finished good, yeah? Yeah, so you are all very correct. In economics looks at three things. So there's production, distribution, and consumption, yeah? So production is where we have all the inputs that are needed, whether it's let's take farming for example. So farm inputs can be machinery that are used to till the land, can be chemicals and fertilizers that are used to provide a good environment for the soil. There can be water. There can be what else? The seeds that are used, which quality and such like. And then there's now also the labor that is used to actually plant and weed and do all these other things. So that's just on the production part, on the input parts. And then we come to production. So production is the element where now we are converting the inputs become a raw material to another process in the value chain. So we want to add value. So for example, let's say we've gotten maize, yeah? The maize will be taken to the millers where it will be milled into flour. And then now from the flour, we now need to take it to market. So distribution. So now we finding logistic partners, whether it's brokers or whoever they are, marketers, they take it and they get to the market. And then now when it's gotten to the market, other things also happen there. So for example, where you'll find Pembe maize flour, Ajab maize flour, Jogo maize flour, Soko Ugali. Everybody sort of like starts to market their produce, selling a different value. And then now it gets to the end user, which is where the consumption is happening. So the reason why I want for us to cover the value chain analysis today is because, for example, Kenya is a very competitive market, yeah? You come up with a very interesting product today. Tomorrow, somebody else has sort of like mimicked what you're already doing. And the long and short of it is that it causes like a lot of competition. And if you guys are vying for the same customer, then that means potential revenues that could have been made by in getting two customers, you now have to divide that across the different brands or businesses that are operating the same space. So when it comes to product development and creation, before you actually, this is especially, this is in a place where, let's say, you're just starting out, you haven't yet kind of like identified which area you want to play in. It helps to have to do an assessment of the industry's value chain, just to understand who the different players are, what level are they actually playing in, and also where do you want to come in and create value. So for example, if we look at this example, we can see this is clothes and apparel / fashion industry. Yeah. On the input side, we have your cotton growing and everything that goes on that end. And then in the production stages, so we can see there are people who just convert the cotton into I don't know whether this is a string or a wool, but at least they make it something that can now be churned into clothes. From there, we can also see there are people who actually do the making of the clothing, and then the distributors who get it to market. So just for the sake of ensuring that we are together up until this point, um, how many businesses do you think are potentially in this area? I think let's try to exhaust this before we actually get into the workshop itself.
In the apparel or in the production activities and outputs?
Everything from inputs to consumption. So how many businesses do you think are there? You can name them, by the way.
We name them per stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I can give an example of Vivo. They're in the apparel industry, and they normally transform the inputs from these wool to like proper, decent, really elegant dresses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Taking Vivo as an example, yeah. So maybe they'll get the wool and then they'll sew it into nice clothing, yeah. Do they, from there on, do they actually sell the things themselves, or do they
Oh
find
yeah,
distributors?
they do distribute to the individual clients, then
Mm-hmm.
the clients consume. So I think we got it to the end.
Okay,
Yeah.
sawa. And when it comes to marketing, do they do their own marketing?
Yes, they do, but they've also, what they've done is they've outsourced part of their marketing, in that some of their clothes are housed under a different e-commerce platform. Can't remember the
Mm-hmm.
name. It's a Swahili name that houses different African
Mm-hmm.
designers' clothes. But they
Okay,
also do their own marketing.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Caroline. So Caroline has identified one potential business that does the sewing, the marketing, and then the distribution to the final consumer. So that's one example. Another business that we see here, Joy. I can give an example. I think we know Jed Collections, yeah? Yeah, so Jed Collections, primarily, I think for them, they are mostly a distributor. So they'll source the clothes from different places and then they sell. So that is another example that's there. Peter, do you want to share?
Can we consider the farmer business?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there's the farmer also at the very beginning. For them, they're just concerned with ensuring that they have the right seeds to get the right cotton. Na hizo vitu zote. What else, Caroline?
There's a business that I once, at that time, I was doing like an interview of SMEs, and there's this guy who has a business called Big Cuckoo. So
Mhm,
what he's done, he normally um he has a farm of chicken.
mhm,
So he like grows them and then feeds them nicely, and
mhm,
then at the end sells the chicken but also the eggs. Like
mhm,
distribution is there. He's the one who does the delivery to different centers in Kenya.
mhm,
So the cuckoos you normally buy the ones you cook off freezer. So he
mhm.
does a lot of that. He makes a lot of money from that business. um yeah, and then people consume at the end. So I think he handles that from the start, from input to consumption. He's called Big Cuckoo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Aya, sawa sawa. So we can see how, and thank you for the examples, Joy. You're very right. So we can see from the examples, in a typical value chain, a number of different business opportunities can come up. So, for example, on the input side, if it's a clothing business, we have people who are providing the machinery. Probably the farmer doesn't have a lot of money to be able to buy their own machinery. So maybe they're getting tractors from somewhere else. Yeah. So we can also just have somebody who's offering tractors to farmers, large scale farmers who are in the cotton industry. Yeah. So that can be one line of business. Another line of business can be, let's say, like the seeds. So for us, we know we're just specialists. Joy has shared some examples, Seed Pro and the likes. So these are people who are just, their focus is ensuring that we have high quality seeds that we can give to these farmers. And then now from there, we move on to people who convert the raw material, so which is now like the cotton, into a semi-finished product, so which is the wool. Yeah. So here we can also have just people who do that. And then there's the people who actually now convert the wool into apparel. And even in this space, there are a number of different businesses that come up here. So for example, we know for these products to for us to actually convert the raw material into semi-finished or finished good, we need electricity. Yeah. So we have your electricity suppliers. We can see that there are machines that they use. So the sewing machines and all these other things zinahitajika hapo. We have people who provide packaging. So once you've finished coming up with the product, um, how is it going to be packaged for it to get to the end user? So packaging also comes into there. Um, from the distribution end, we have your logistics providers, so the likes of Akina Sendi, independent people who have trucks and whatnot. They also come there. And then when it comes to consumption, there are also a number of different businesses that come up there. So that's where you can have your Jumias, your Shop Zetus. I think Vivo also have their own website, your backyard shoes, and wherever, like all those other different brands, they also come there. So depending on where you are playing, you can see each stage has different competitors. Yeah. And each stage will also have different profitability because of the activities that are needed to um, be performed in that specific area. So, for example, if it's just the seeds segment, we know that there is research and development that goes into coming up with, let's say, drought resistant seeds, seeds that are potentially also pest resistant, seeds that also have a shorter what's it called, a shorter maturity period. And there's a lot of research and development that goes into that. So you have costs associated with R&D, also getting the seeds to market, how you store the seeds, so that you can have enough to actually satisfy the needs of the different markets that you're serving. All that will depend on your costs, and how much you're able to actually generate will depend on those two variables. if we get to, for example, a brand like Vivo, in the example that we've been given, since they convert the semi-finished product into a finished product, they do the marketing and they actually get it to market. Potentially, they control a larger, what's it called, share of the cake, in terms of like being able to capture more value, in terms of like, now I'm talking dollar amount, yeah, compared to, let's say, somebody like Shopzetu or Jumia or whoever else is just selling the finished product, yeah. So that is what I want for us to look at today. So which industry would you want for us to look at? And then I think we can now start from there. So Caroline has talked about Sandy. Last week, Peter had talked about, what's it called? Safe border. Do you want for us to work with those, or are there others? Because I think we can do one, and then we see how best to go about it.
We could do that. We could, or because I'm thinking, does Sandy have an input side of it, or the input would be the talent? And because taking a company like Brookside would be ideal, the Kenyatta family Brookside company, because I think they own the entire value chain from start to finish, from input to consumption.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Nini. So I think what I want for us to see, yeah. So when you're coming up with products, somehow when you're going to go to market with products, in each section, yeah, whether it's the input section, whether it's the production section, distribution, or consumption, you are targeting a different customer. So for example, in the input section, yeah, the farmer is not concerned about the end consumer, yeah.
Yeah.
The farmer is concerned about the companies that would convert their product either into a semi-finished or finished product, yeah. So even in terms of like targeting, it's very different compared to maybe another business that is doing end-to-end. So if a business decides to do end-to-end, that means they have to fight competition across the entire value chain. And that becomes also another very expensive endeavor. So usually utapata, if you are a startup, probably you'll pick one area in the value chain where you want to play. Yeah. And depending on the place that you pick, that will also determine what are the activities that other players in that specific area that you've chosen in the value chain, what are the activities they are doing, and how does that affect average industry profitability?
Okay, we could do Sandy.
Yeah. So tunaweza angalia Sandy. So are we all in agreement? If you are in agreement, raise your hand up. Welcome, Derek. Sawa. Cool. So we can get started. Are you guys familiar with the Potter's 5 forces? Caroline, have you heard of that?
The prize, place, promotion. Oh, that's a different one.
No, that's marketing.
The marketing. 5 forces.
Yeah, it's important though. Yeah. So Potter, let me find. Okay, Joy anataka service industry. So if time will allow, I think we'll also look at that. So let me pull from an older masterclass that I did. You can see my screen, huh?
Yes.
Okay, sawa kidogo tu. Yeah. So let me share these examples. So first, another example of a value chain and the way things show up. So for example, an example of Trigger Foods, yeah. So we have your farmer, yeah. So once a farmer, the crop has gotten to a stage where it's mature, they need to find a market for their crop. So Trigger comes in, they get the crop from the farmer, and then Trigger can decide to either take let me get my mouse ndio tuone nini. Let me get my mouse. Let me get 2 minutes, kidogo tu.
Okay, okay.
Derek, you can say hi to the team and let guys know how you're doing. Karibu.
Yes, hello, good morning. Sorry, I logged in late. But my colleague is already on the call, so I'm doing well. Just with a cold, Nairobi cold, but I'll be fine. So my voice is not as good. Yeah, but good to be here. Good enough. My colleague Joy is on the line, so thank you.
All right, so I am back. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, you can. I can.
Okay. Sawa sawa. So on one end we have your Trigger, and Trigger can do a number of different things. Yeah. So they can take the produce from the farmer, and then they take it to market. So that is kind of like the downward pointing arrow. Yeah. Or they can choose to do some value addition. Yeah. So maybe here is where they do the sorting, they do the packaging, and then they take that to another distributor who takes it to the market. Yeah. Or Trigger can also choose to sell directly to the customer, where you see that person who's eating the person who's eating the fruit. Yeah. Alternatively, a farmer can also choose to cut out Trigger altogether and take their produce directly to market. But that also requires for the farmer to perform different activities. So does that mean that maybe they'll need to do the sorting themselves? Does that mean that they'll need to find other logistics partners, or do they buy their own trucks and all these other things? So depending on what you decide to do, it can look different. Another example is Shell. So Shell, for them, they do the drilling, the transportation of the crude oil, they do the refinery, they do the marketing, and then they do the selling themselves also. So this also looks quite different. If you were to become a competitor in the oil industry, probably it might be very difficult for you to afford it because of all the different activities that happen, which is why maybe you find that most people prefer to be distributors. So you come in and you set up your own petrol station, and then you negotiate a contract with them. We won't look at the example for Safaricom because it's a bit kubwa, but yeah, when it comes to Porter's five forces, this is what I mean. Share. So when it comes to any market, yeah, there are a number of different forces that affect operational costs, product pricing, and business profits. So the first one is the bargaining power of suppliers. So if you're getting seeds and you only have one supplier, that means the supplier has a lot of power because they are able to set prices as they want. Sometimes they're able even to create artificial shortages and such like and such like. But if you're in a place where, let's say, there are very many suppliers, then that means you could potentially pit them against each other so that you can get your inputs at a cheaper rate. Yeah. The other end is bargaining power of customers. So I don't know if you guys have had a chance to go through the e-commerce case study that I did, but essentially what you have is, because the market is also like very fragmented, so you have your Jumia, you have your Kilimalls, you have your Rupus, you have your Pigiamis and OLXs and all these other things. Yeah. Even in the food category, you have Jumia Food, you have Bolt, and you have all these other different players, and all of them are vying for the same customers while offering the same value. So what does that mean? It means the customer has a lot of say in terms of like where they choose to spend their money on, and as such, your prices will probably go down for you to be able to capture a larger market share. So it's not only about creating things that customers love, but you also want to ensure that you're not giving the customer too much power to the extent that it will start affecting your bottom line. The other thing is threat of substitute products. Yeah. So, for example, we know we are currently in the cold season, and in the during the cold season, there are a number of different ways in which you can arm yourself against the cold. So you can use leather jacket, you can use let's say if you took a trench coat, you can use sweaters and all these other different things. So simply because I am making in the business of making maybe high quality leather products, if a customer is not able to use my leather products, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to stick with me. They can potentially get another clothing item that can offer the same utility at a different price point. It might not be the leather, but it can be something else that also a customer can actually purchase. And then there's also the threat of new entrants. So for any business, there's something called barriers to entry. Yeah. If the barriers to entry are very low, then it means your competitive edge is not very strong, because anybody can actually come in and duplicate what you're doing, target the same customers with the same value proposition. Yeah. So when we want to now start looking at some of the examples we've talked about, these are the things we'll be looking at. Let's discuss. Yeah. So when it comes to bargaining power of suppliers, what do you think happens when suppliers? What will happen to your costs and your prices when suppliers have too much power? Derek, do you want to give it an attempt? Derek?
Sorry, I was absent-minded a little bit. Come again?
Yeah. So we are looking at the different competitor forces, and we want to see how each affects production costs and also prices.
Yes.
So yes, so at the supplier end, so if your suppliers have too much power, what does that do to your costs and your prices?
If the suppliers have too much power, then it means that they determine the price,
Mm-hmm.
and I have no control over the price. I have no control over the market, and
Mm-hmm.
so in most cases I'll have to sell at cost or
Mm-hmm.
at an agreeable price by them and not
Mm-hmm.
me. So the factors are in not so much determined by me; they're determined by them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means potentially your operational costs could go a bit higher. And then also what typically happens is if costs of production go high, then it means the customer also has to pay more. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sawa sawa. Bargaining power of customers. What do you think that does to prices and also costs? Carol, do you want to attempt that?
Yeah. So when the customers have a higher bargaining power, that means all the businesses have to realign their pricing to be able to be appealing to the customers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. So that means potentially maybe your operational costs won't be as high as when the suppliers increase their prices. But what this means is that your margins are going to reduce because now
Yeah.
you have to reduce your prices. Yeah.
Yeah. To remain competitive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Rivalry among existing competitors. Maybe let's skip that for now. Threat of substitute products. Uh, Peter, do you want to talk about that?
Okay, sure. I guess the business will be forced to innovate
Mm-hmm.
in terms of market. They'll be forced to realign their prices with the competitors, with the new substitute products.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is good because it means you need to start looking at better value addition to your products. So potentially your costs might go up if your focus is on R&D. But then also it means your customer segments are going to reduce. Yeah, because if in the example that we gave around, do I go for a leather jacket? And leather jackets don't come cheap. Yeah, or do I go for a sweater somewhere? Yeah. So that also determines which market segments I'm looking at and how that's going to potentially change. Threat of new entrants, I think we've already talked about. If the barriers to entry are very low, then it means anybody can actually come in with a copycat and potentially also spoil the market for you. So let's start with the example of we tumeagree tunafanya gani?
There's a question from Joy. How do you apply the forces? Actually, I think we could also explore that. How do we apply all that to service business? Because I think apart from Peter, all of us are in
Uh,
consulting. Yes. How do
uh,
we protect ourselves
mhm.
and ensure that we are remaining competitive as
So
service providers?
okay, so Joy, do you have an example of a service nini that we can look at?
Yes, my farm.
Law firm, yeah. Nice one. Yeah, sawa. Cool. All right. So, I think let's start with the product, and then we'll get into the service. Ama we start with the service. Let's start with the service then. Sawa. So, Joy, yeah.
Yes.
I want everybody to join in the document. I hope you guys I don't know if you're on your machine ama mnatumia simu.
I'm on my laptop. You can drop the link to the
Okay.
document.
Sawa. All right. All right. Naona watu wana join. Cool. So for Joy's case, we are a law firm, yeah? And for a law firm, so let's start with, let's say, company. Remember, if we go back to our previous, share this tab instead. To our previous description of a value chain, we say that at each stage, you are engaging with a number of different competitors, yeah? So you want to see how does that apply in the value chain of a service product. So, all right. So we're looking at the competitive forces. So company, let's say service. What else are we looking at? Price. Average pricing. Activities involved. Yeah, so we'll keep spreading it out as we go. So let's say, for example, company X, yeah? Company X. Joy.
Yes, and I can't see what you're typing. Are you? Is everyone else
Oh,
seeing what?
Connie, I'm not sharing my screen. Kidogo.
I didn't say that. We edit. Yeah,
Can you
because
guys see now?
can you guys see me?
Yeah, now
Pamoja?
you can see.
Now I can
Okay.
see.
Yeah, sawa. So we want to do a value chain analysis of, let's say, an example of a service industry. Yeah. So in the law firm, so Joy, you will remain unmuted because you'll be guiding us here, but we are now starting. So services. So tukikuja kwa services, I know there are a number of different services that law firms offer. Yeah. So so let's go. Kuna family law.
Beautiful. Yes.
What else?
Conveyance. Conveyance.
I don't know if I've spelled it correctly, but tutaandika tu hiyo.
Commercial
What else?
law.
Commercial law. Go ahead.
Have what? Succession. And estate planning.
Succession. What else?
Estate planning. There's
Estate
trust
planning.
law.
Arbitration pia.
Yes.
Anything else that we've left out?
There's litigation.
Litigation, eh?
Yes.
Sawa. Na zile ma civil pia ina apply ama iko ndani ya conveyance?
Civil what? Civil cases and criminal and etc. all in litigation.
Ziko under litigation, eh?
Yes. So it's a
Okay.
category in litigation. Criminal, civil, commercial, constitutional, whatever you want.
Okay. I think tuziweke tu zote.
Criminal law, civil law, competition law, there is. We can be here till tomorrow morning.
Sawa. I think let's stop with those examples. Sawa. So even in the service, for example, you can see that you have a number of different you have a number of different products that you could potentially, products or services that you could potentially offer for the customers. Yeah. And then acha kwa activities kwanza. So which are some potential customer segments?
So for us, it can come in either of two ways: individual clients or corporate clients, depending on the need.
Individual or corporate?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other group that we might be missing?
I don't know how else we can filter, because under individual you can have different contexts of clients.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Then under corporate as well, you can have different, depending on the client's needs. So you can be an individual client under conveyance, under litigation, under family, whichever the. Then you can also be a corporate client in need of commercial service or litigation service or ADR, whichever.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly they would just come in those pieces.
Okay. Sawa sawa. And what would you say is needed to be able to, let's say, deliver these services? So hii naiweka kando because this one we itakuwa place yake tofauti. So maybe you need lawyers.
Yes.
Kidogo. View is one row.
So are those the suppliers that we were talking about in the other whatever field?
Tunataka tu kuona which activities, because probably you guys are doing end to end, but it might be in a case that inaitwaje, it might also be a case where, for example, if your company maybe doesn't have, I know in the different kinds of laws, yeah, probably utapata maybe a very good criminal lawyer might not necessarily be maybe very good at also, let's say, something like commercial law ama kitu kaa hiyo, because najua kuna venye even within lawyers kuna ama unapata lawyer moja anaweza kwa meiva hizi zote.
No, it's hard. Mostly specialization brings expertise, but of course they are jacks of all trades and experts of none.
Sawa sawa. So kuna specialization na kuna generalist, yeah. So what else do you need? Registration, eh? Ama ni compliance?
Registration, there is compliance. And compliance is pretty wide because there are trainings, continuous trainings that you have to attend. Then you have to have insurance, professional indemnity insurance. You have to take out your practicing certificate. That's under compliance. So also quite wide. Yeah.
Sawa sawa. So here's why this exercise is important. So for example, let's put them pamoja. So kuna family law, kuna conveyance law, kuna commercial law, succession law, estate planning, arbitration, criminal law, civil law, competition law. Let's take those examples, yeah. So when it comes to things like pricing, I don't know if there are any laws that maybe, let's say, you need to have maybe a cup of this and a cup of this. First of all, before we get into that, is there a law that specifies what a law firm should charge a potential client?
Yes. We call it the Advocate Remuneration Order, or ARO. So it basically stipulates the minimum that the law allows an advocate to charge, below which it's an offense.
Okay. And does it say? Yeah. And does it say anything about a maximum?
No.
Okay. Sawa sawa. So, and based on the different sorts of laws and litigations zenye ziko hapa ndani, what I imagine, for example, when it comes to family law, commercial law, and all these other different types of laws, the payout is quite different, yeah?
Yes.
Depending on who you're serving. Ndio?
Yes.
Yeah. So, for example, in the family law,
Mm.
assuming maybe you're not sorting maybe an issue for watu kama wakina Uhuru, what would you say maybe is the average price you'd charge, let's say, to litigate, let's say, something like a divorce case?
So we normally charge depending on the station,
Mm-hmm.
the court station, and the complexity of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I would give it a minimum of maybe 100,000
Okay.
for like a station within Nairobi and a pretty straightforward divorce matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sawa
Yeah.
sawa. When it comes to commercial law, I know this is also I know this is also dependent on a number of different factors.
Yes.
But what would you say? Because I know maybe something like size of the company, nini nini hizo vitu zote, they might potentially also affect.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So maybe can I have a range? Because I know a maximum, it can go as high as it can go.
Yes, it can go to trillions of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Highlight dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But so an average now, what are we talking about? Yeah, because it depends on the company, the complexity of the matter, the
Mm-hmm.
nature of instruction,
Mm-hmm.
the length of time,
Mm-hmm.
what it involves in terms of if there are any other parties or other bodies involved. For instance, if you're doing a merger and acquisition under commercial law,
Mm-hmm.
you know that's something that you would need a lot of involvement, capital markets authority,
Mm-hmm.
companies registry, etc, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends, but probably you can just say for a normal simple transaction, let me say maybe a contract between Mark and Peter for this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can do maybe an average of the same for a simple contract, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Sawa sawa. Succession law, hiyo sielewi vizuri, maybe we'll skip kidogo.
No, that's a
Uh-huh.
very good one
Tell us.
because it's basically just passing on of property from the deceased to their beneficiaries.
Okay.
Again, it just depends on the
Does
nature
it
of
follow? Does it fall under family law?
succession law.
Yeah. Does it
Well,
fall?
family law mainly cover living members of the family in terms of divorce matters, child custody matters, division of matrimonial property, all sorts of things that you're dealing with people who are alive. In succession, now you're dealing with deceased, their wishes, and the way you will transmit their assets and estate to their beneficiaries.
So
So in
writing
that
wills
sense,
falls under that. Writing
yeah.
wills. Okay. Okay.
Writing wills falls under the next one called estate planning. Succession, basically, you're out of the world. So you're just dealing with deceased people and how to manage their assets. But in estate planning, that's where now you deal with different modes of estate planning: wills, trusts, gifts given in lifetime, etc., etc.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So
So
for an average succession matter, let's
mm-hmm.
just we can average it at about maybe give and take depending on again where the deceased passed on from within the country, out of the country, etc. Maybe what 200,000.
Okay. Uh-huh.
That's the minimum.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Then estate planning, again, it depends. But that one now can go as low as 50, depending on, again, who is doing planning of their estate and what modes of estate planning, and it can also go as high as 1 billion,
Mm.
depending on the size of the estate again. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
consider something like bigger estates are a bit more expensive because they are more complex to plan. They are companies, they are businesses, they are family trust, there are children who are growing, there's education issues, etc. But the minimum I said is because you can also just have a very small estate and you're maybe just doing a simple will. So it can have a range, but that will be the minimum.
Okay. Arbitration, wale watu wataki vitu ziende kwa koti.
Tunakutana tu pia kwa out of court, and arbitration can be quite costly because it's more time efficient.
Okay.
So to be practical, the least I've paid an arbitrator myself is about 320,000.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
you can give it probably a minimum of 300.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mumeona sura ya Joy alafu mtafuta mpige ngeta huko nje.
No, God, Jesus. That's not my money. That's arbitrators. Where more? We'll see you.
Criminal law.
Depends again who you're representing, the seriousness of the crime, the public figure, not public figure, all those things come into play. But probably I'd give it 100,000, like just for a normal.
Yeah, because it
Kenyan.
can even be pro bono hii, yeah?
That one can be pro bono. Actually, sometimes you're forced by court to represent accused person while you're fit in court. Yeah.
Okay. Sawa. And then civil law is in my class action suit, eh?
Yeah, depending on the type.
Na najua payment inatikingi time na nini, but the value is usually quite good, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Competition law?
Those ones are a bit pricey because it's high stake. So anywhere from 500,000. Yeah, depending again on the size of the company, the extent of breach of competition laws, the proof you have, etc., etc. IP, intellectual property rights, if the same had been protected or not. So it can be a bit high stake here. Yeah.
Sawa. Aya. So let's pause here. If you remember last week's masterclass, we talked about a number of different things, especially as we were starting this product ideation topic. So we talked about what customer, what product, what value. Yeah, what problem, which customer, what value proposition. Yeah. So if we are to just look at this, yeah, because you can have a law firm and you could potentially decide that you're going to practice all these different sets of laws, but then also depending on which area you focus on, it has potential to affect your profitability, your cash flows, and also the different activities you're going to do to be able to become a force to be reckoned with in this area. So when it comes to just law as an example here, yeah, what I would imagine, Joy, yeah, is a law firm that has not specialized probably becomes a bit difficult to attract the high net worth, whether it's in the individuals or companies. Is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
So that means potentially, if you are doing everything, then inamaanisha the decision you've decided is that all money is good money, but that means you might probably find yourself in court every other day because, for example, if I'm getting somebody who an estate somebody to, let's say, do estate planning with, then I know for me to cover my costs, maybe I need to, at any given point, maybe I need to have, is it maybe 10, 20 customers at a go, whether it's an amount, nini kitu kaa hiyo, yeah, na hizi and all these other things. But let's say, for example, if it was something to do with the commercial law, what else here, arbitration, this means these people would probably have me on some form of a retainer, yeah.
Right.
And as a result, yes, maybe I might not be litigating every other day, but I know there's regular income coming through, and in the event that I need to do litigation, the payout is also quite huge, yeah. And that also affects cash flow and overall profitability. So what I wanted to highlight with this is, if you're looking at, for you to be effective in what you're going to do as a business, you first have to make a decision on who you're going to serve, yeah. So yeah, so tulisema kuna, if we look at how the market segments itself, there's the 10% who are the early adopters. These people pay without necessarily bargaining, and meaning they believe in the value and they're able to pay. And then there's the people, the large percentage who are in the middle. These are the guys you need to convince why they should choose you, yeah. And usually unapata the small percentage of people who are willing to pay, they're not very many, but the basket potential is quite huge. So for your law firm to become successful at the product or service you're offering, you might need to pivot and choose a specific customer, or maybe have one primary customer, and then hizi zingine zinakuwa it's like support services, yeah. So you know, like, where you're making your money, but then these other services also just come into help increase like what's getting into the pot. So looking at this, because I can already see. So if you were to, let's say, become a high profile criminal law firm, for example, like kuna ule jamaa wa Twitter ule inaitwa Clifford Ombeta, you know Clifford?
Yeah.
Uh, so you see, the way that guy has positioned himself is that if you know you've found yourself labda umeshikwa na wash and the likes, you've been doing some money laundering and whatnot, potentially is the guy to go to, because of I don't know whether it's the number of cases he's won as a criminal lawyer, ama the way that he's positioned himself, but he seems to be quite the person that people would run to for cases involving criminal law. If it comes to, let's say, things like arbitration, then there are also law firms that I would imagine in Kenya are known to be quite good at arbitration, and maybe those are the ones that attract that service. So is it becoming a bit more clear in the sense of choosing a specific customer? Because now when you choose that specific customer, all the activities that you do to be able to deliver that service are going to look quite different to another law firm that has decided to do and play across all the different forms of litigation that might happen.
Right.
Ama kuna swali hapo? Bado tumeanza, we're just starting, but we'll get into it tuone.
No, that
I have a
makes
question.
sense.
What's the best angle for Joy to take to select the niche she wants to operate in? That she would do we need her to choose a niche where she has a passion for, or where there's money, or a space she understands? What's the best angle, or an industry that has a potential to grow? You know, something like commercial. I think commercial law has a lot of potential with all the businesses and startups that are coming up. but she understands better. So what decision matrix should she use to decide what, like, which industries to focus on? Her
All right.
passion, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. Yeah. If we look at the examples that we talked about for Safaricom and Kensel, we started with the vision and the purpose. Yeah. So there's a reason why, Joy, you are practicing law, and there's something that you hope to achieve. What is that? I think everything will start from there first. So, for example, criminal law. I know I don't want to say if it's Christians, for people who are overly religious, you might find that you could potentially struggle to go and defend a case where potentially maybe you know that your client is guilty. Yeah. So maybe some people will decide, for me, my law firm is not going to practice criminal law. Yeah. Um, that's just like one example. But when it comes to potentially which area should Joy focus on, I think it has to start, number one, with the vision, because the vision is what will keep you motivated when things are not going okay. So if you are just in it to make money, because, for example, I imagine getting the high net worth paying clients, they don't just walk through your door. Yeah. These are sometimes people where you have to either get an introduction to, ama you have to have a very good track record in terms of like cases you've won for them to actually even give you a look. So that means before you even lock your first client that is able to pay, let's say, 2 million per case, ama put you on a retainer of 300 per month, it means you have to have some level of clout to yourself. And before you actually get to that level, it means there are a number of different activities that you need to do. So that is just one example. But it's not necessarily all about the money, because if you decide to also offer your services to everyone, yeah, so this means the people who are unataka kununua land, but maybe we can only afford 50 by 100, 40 by 100, and all these other things, you can still make money from that specific customer segment. It's just that maybe you might need to do more of that, and that is perfectly okay. In essence, what I'm saying is that in business, choices have to be made, because if you choose not to make a choice, then it becomes very difficult to have the right focus, because on one end, you're chasing maybe, let's say, a high net worth individual. And if you were to get, let's say, a case for a land transfer, potentially you might find that you might want to prioritize the person who's the high net worth individual, and then mwingine, maybe you're not serving them that well, and then eventually it ends up providing a negative customer experience, and which could also potentially damage your reputation as a law firm. So decisions have to be made, and then now from the decisions is where now we could now start getting into the strategy, which is the strategy. Now we look at things like market sizing. So, for example, if we are going to look at high net worth individuals, how many of them are actually out there? There's a segment I'm doing on user segmentation, where we look at all those different things. But to answer the question, that's what I would say. You first need to look at your vision in terms of like why are you in business in the first place, and then now from there you pick the problem that you're going to solve and for who. Does that make sense, Caroline?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Lazima ukuwe na passion, and you use the word of passion, which is very important. The passion is what will drive you when the money is not coming in.
True.
Because without that, then I don't think it's very easy for you to become differentiated. Remember, we talked about differentiation and distinctiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Joy. Joy, based on
Yes.
where we are currently talking, yeah, the examples we've already looked at so far, what would you say are maybe like your 2, 3 biggest areas of practice?
Estate planning, which comes with
Estate.
succession, yes,
Mm-hmm.
followed
Okay,
closely by, sorry, estate planning and
go ahead.
succession, those come together. Then number 2 is family law, and number 3 is conveyancing. And to be clear, those are the areas of our expertise as well. Probably I can
Mm-hmm.
also contribute to what Caroline was asking. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're trying to make a decision matrix, you should also look beyond vision, passion, and purpose. You can look at what's your expertise, and then like once you know your vision, your purpose, your passion, then you know your target market and you have your expertise, it really kind of solves the who and the how. In this sense, you're able then to specialize on your area of expertise and deliver so well that you don't need to advertise. You get, referrals and cross-reference business, and you also do internal cross-selling, because as soon as a client is clear that you're able to deliver on this one thing with such expertise, then they would probably trust you even for a different field, um, that is connected to what you do. So it becomes very important for me, I feel like, especially for people in service industry, to be very what is um, what is your area of expertise, and can you leverage on that to create a brand that is known for delivering. So yeah, I wanted
Uh,
to add that angle as well.
very right, very right. And you've also gotten into what I was getting into. So, for example, if you decide to do family law, if you decide to do succession law, if you decide to do estate planning, for example, even the staff that you have, it means they have to have a certain level of expertise in litigating against those specific domains that you've chosen. Yeah. Kwa sababu maybe unaweza weka maybe a criminal lawyer, all they're trying to do is to understand maybe previous cases, what are the loopholes, how have previous judgments gone, so that they can see how best they can help you. But let's say for somebody like whether it's arbitration or conveyance, then that means also they need to be spending a lot of time. You talked about continuous improvement, yeah. So when it comes to
Yeah.
continuous improvement, it means they also need to be familiarizing themselves with how things have been in the past, what is the potential for things to change, how are the laws even changing over time, na hizo vitu zote. So there has to be like significant amount of time that is going into building those expertise. And then also, um, what does it mean, for example, when it comes to setting up a company? It could be that maybe as an individual, you're quite good at these other areas, but when now you want to build a company, maybe you need partners to come in. So where are you going to get your customers? Your partners. So for example, I don't know, I think we've all watched Suits at some point, and you can see that specific law firms potentially just hire from certain universities. Yeah,
Mm.
maybe there's maybe there's a brand element that comes with that. I don't know if it's in the quality of education, ama I don't know if it helps with locking certain clients. So depending on which area you want to play, it even determines which is now the inputs that we're talking about. So for example, your employees, yeah, as a service industry, your employees can to some extent determine the quality of service you're going to offer. So let's say if you are in at cafe, yeah, and you are at cafe, you're in the foods business, it means, and you are potentially charging a certain amount for your products. For you to be able to deliver on the expected quality, last time we looked at low price, middle price, and high priced. Yeah. And for any high priced product, there's a certain experience and quality that's expected by the user. So as at cafe, if you get a caterers from high school to come and prepare meals for your customers, there's going to be a disconnect between the final output versus maybe what they saw on the menu and whatnot. Yeah. Same case with the law firm. If you know that you're going to target whether it's family, whether it's succession, estate, commercial, or whatever bucket of customer you want to target, it means even your employees, they have to have a certain background that you're looking at. And that also has consequences because it can potentially affect the cost of doing business. Because let's say, for example, getting somebody from Harvard is not the same as maybe getting somebody from University of Nairobi. One of those people might potentially come with a very high, I don't know if it's a retainer or salary or something of the sort. So naona kwa employees pia, the level of quality will need to be different so that you can either lock that potential client or increase the chances of success whenever you go to litigate a case. So are there any other inputs that go into the service delivery? So I know you need good lawyers. What else do you need?
I'm trying to think, and that's why I really needed us to do this for service industry, because now we don't have, we are not buying seedlings anymore. But top of my mind, I would say yes, employees is the biggest input. Number two, probably the kind of investment, I don't know how to call this, like the resources, the legal resources you can get into. There are companies that provide you with legal resources, both nationally and internationally, and you subscribe for that. So probably we say legal resources in terms of case law, development of cases, etc. Now, who else is a supplier for a service-based industry? Because that's where it's based on the knowledge you have and the expertise you build. I would say then continuous education, I guess, but who then again is the supplier there? Is it the institution from where you learn, or who becomes the supplier at that point?
Okay. So
What do
so
you
we can
think,
see like
in your opinion, who are the suppliers for service-based businesses? Like a consultant, which you are, who are your suppliers?
So that's that's a very good question because no matter how you look at it, for example, even those suppliers you're talking about, yeah, they're also getting their inputs from elsewhere. Yeah. So for example, like for me as a consultant, if I was coming in to help you maybe understand which areas of your business you should really focus in on, what areas of optimization exist, it means also to a large extent for me, I also need to be improving my craft so that if you choose me versus another consultant, your likelihood of success is going to be slightly much higher than maybe, let's say, if you had went with another competitor. It could be with the knowledge that I have, the amount of time I spend to upskill myself and bring myself to make myself current with emerging trends, while also leveraging on past experiences and such like and such like. I think for your case also, another example here could potentially be, let's say, kuna maneno ya outsourcing, yeah. So assuming maybe you are unable to hire employees that maybe could potentially be great at whether it's arbitration ama nini, and you've decided that maybe that's an area that you want to focus on, yeah. Kidogo kwanza, another question here. Is there a law prohibiting lawyers from different firms litigating a case together?
The only thing is conflict of interest, such that you cannot, for instance, work with opposing counsel on your case. because there's a clear
What does
breach of
opposing counsel
contract.
mean?
Okay. If I'm representing you against Safaricom or whoever else, I cannot now pick a lawyer from their firm to come and work with us on the same matter. There's a conflict of interest. But
Okay,
I've
okay.
also
Mhm,
I've seen situations also where we call it building a Chinese wall internally, such that if,
mhm,
for instance, we are acting for the same company but on opposing sides, building a
mhm,
Chinese wall within your law firm means the two sides of advocates who are acting for the same party but on different sides are not allowed to
mhm,
talk, they're not allowed to share any correspondence. There's all sorts of measures put to ensure this
mhm,
side does not have any benefit of getting information from the other side, more although you're in the same firm. Let me give a case in point. If I'm
mhm,
representing Mark against Safaricom, but
mhm,
we are also representing Safaricom against
mhm,
Mark. So you would put up a
mhm,
Chinese wall internally, and it normally would need a larger size law firm that
mhm,
have enough industry and measures to put measures to ascertain that one advocate from the same firm representing one end does not in any way source information from the advocates handling the other side of the same case. It's
mhm.
a very, very thin line. Not many clients would trust that Chinese wall, particularly in Kenya, but it works well actually abroad. So, but
Okay.
to answer your question, yes, the only thing that stops advocates from outsourcing or using a different advocate to work on a matter together with you is that there should be no conflict of interest.
Okay. All right. So as long as the lines are clear, then it is doable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so that means, for example, if you could potentially, maybe let's say, win a high value case, yeah, but maybe you feel that you're not yet quite at the level that is required for you to win that specific case. You could leverage on the support of another lawyer or law
Actually,
firm.
that
Mhm,
is a very good point, because there are times where you're even up to the task, but the court
mhm,
before which you're going requires a
mhm,
certain expert,
mhm,
um,
mhm,
or an advocate of certain number of years to practice before
mhm,
them. So at that
mhm,
point, much as you're capable in terms of your knowledge and expertise, it is a
mhm,
requirement now from the external party, in this case the courts, that will
mhm,
determine whether in fact you need to outsource or not.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, so outsourcing is a big supplier for sure.
Ndio hiyo sasa. So I think it's becoming clearer. So for the cases you can win, definitely go ahead and win those. But then also there's this matter of continuous improvement that also influences the legal resources that you're going to need. Yeah. So tumesema ka case laws, development of cases, and all these other areas. And it could potentially even be that maybe, let's say, it's just that it's a very unique industry, but I would assume the law firms, they do sometimes do businesses together. So I don't know what the laws are, but for example, when you say development of case, yeah, does that mean something like gathering all the facts that are needed, investigations, nini vituka hizo?
Not quite. What we mean there particularly is where, one, in terms, because our litigation and ADR is based on precedent, decisions made by other courts of superior
Mhm, mhm,
rank. So gathering
mhm,
of those cases that you need to support your own case. Number two,
mhm,
when you're talking about development of case or development of law, it means invest in books, any books that are relevant to that particular
mhm,
matter you're handling. So, for instance, you
mhm,
can invest in books both from local publishers as well as international publishers, respecting the area of expertise.
Mm,
So that's what basically we mean by
okay.
development.
Okay, so this is more about building a knowledge base, yeah, that can help
Yes,
you increase your chances of winning cases, yeah.
right.
Okay, sawa sawa. Yeah, sawa sawa. So I think Nini, there it's starting to become a bit more clearer. And then I think also when it comes to positioning yourself. So for example, like right now, if you want to be known for a specific area, then you might find that maybe in the beginning it might make sense maybe to work to win more cases in that specific area, while also either through outsourcing or partnering with other lawyers to win maybe even higher value cases. Over time, you start doing those activities so that in the long run you won't necessarily need to continuously use their services, but it's an investment so that you can later on actually get to that level. And I also do know that for lawyers, you're prohibited against marketing and advertising. Yeah.
Yes, but we are working on that. We are
Okay.
actively, eh? We are actively
Uh-huh.
working on that in the LSK Council. So yeah.
Okay. Sasa, but it doesn't prohibit you from, let's say, giving your professional opinion on maybe certain rulings, or even just
No, no, no.
educating the. Okay. Sawa sawa.
And
So,
you
for
can never
example.
package it as marketing. That's
Mhm,
the thing. Like even when you see all these advocates, as you're saying, who
mhm,
position themselves, some don't even win a case in court, but they're all over the
mhm.
media.
Yeah.
It is not considered marketing. It is just
Okay.
you giving your legal opinion, and in instances where you're doing legal aid or legal awareness, again, it is not
Mhm.
considered marketing. But we
Mm,
are not allowed to come on telly and do an advertisement or come to, no, we are not allowed to do
Mm, but it's sort of like a soft form of personal branding. You might not be able
mhm,
to say that, but if let's say for example,
that.
Joe, if I
Yes.
see you on telly talking about succession law, I'll be like, yeah, this is the person to
Sorry?
talk to. And I'm saying, for example, if I see you on telly talking about like succession law or estate planning, then I don't know if you are normally allowed to provide your numbers. Obviously, you'll be the best person for people to reach out to.
It depends with how you do it. If, for instance, the station that has called you is the one that then gives your number, that's okay. But you saying, yes, you can come to my farm, we offer these services, my number is this, you'll be flagged and probably taken to
Oh
the
my
police.
goodness. I think even architects do that. There's a friend of mine who told me you're not supposed to advertise yourself as an architect. Same thing.
Exactly. All right.
uh, yeah, sawa sawa. So due to seeing convert E into a consultancy, does it make sense everything that we've talked up until now? For example, if you know you want to offer a certain level of quality, then the strategy to get there is going to look different compared to assuming maybe you are not going for those high net worth individuals. Assuming you're just going for the guys who are able to pay 50,000 to 100,000, then it means your market share is potentially going to be quite large. And potentially, maybe the only other thing that you need to do here is, for example, like you've shared, maybe be more out there in terms of like giving your professional opinion
Thought
on
leadership.
nini, thought leadership. You drive more of the thought leadership so that at least people start associating your brand with the value that you're offering, and then maybe over time you find either through referrals and whatnot, you're able to get more people to come to you. So yes, inamaanisha you might need to even have more foot soldiers so that you can handle the number of volumes that you're going to get. But hiyo pia inamaanisha inaitwaje ile, your margins are going to look quite different compared to somebody maybe who's just litigating 4 to 6 cases in a year, and the investment is also going to look quite different as well. So I think we should still continue with this. so that it sticks, because the process is not any different if it was a product industry, because we are looking at the competitors. So for example, here, assuming maybe you have Mutula and Advocates, Carol and Advocates, Derek and Advocates. So essentially what you want to do, you want to map out all the potential competitors that you have in the specific area of service that you're targeting. Yeah. So whether it's family law, let me see, filter. So assuming it's family law, clear. All right. So assuming it's family law, so you'll map out everybody that is in the family law. So under family law, potentially maybe the lowest you can earn is, let's say, like around 100,000 and the likes. And then you try to see also based on, for example, in the market in Kenya, yeah, what are I think all the cases are documented on the Kenya law website, yeah? Is that true?
Yes.
Yes. And do they make it public in terms of like what the settlement usually
For which
is for
case?
some of these
Which type
cases?
of case?
I think it just depends, but it's possible to get some figures. Case yake, yeah?
Yes, so it depends. Particularly for family matters, we keep the identity of the parties and details thereof private.
Okay.
But for commercial matters,
But if
that
you
depends. Commercial, civil, criminal, etc., mostly you will get information unless the same was done in Camel.
Okay, sawa. So kuna average pricing, which is what you typically charge. And then if you go to, let's say, the Kenya law, whatever that information is documented, and you're able to get a sense of what is the average, what is the median, and what is the maximum. That already starts letting you know. And also you look at things like the frequency of cases. So how many cases are actually covered? Because it's one thing to want to do family law, but maybe how many family law cases, does our Kenyan courts handle, let's say on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, or on a yearly basis? You need all that information so that you can map it out. And then that starts to let you know what the potential market size is. Yeah. So that if you are operating at the very lowest, then this is potentially how much you're able to get. If you're performing better than most, then it means you're looking at the median range. So median revenues, how much does it look like? And actually, how many of those cases actually go to court and get concluded? And then now at the very top level, you also see what does the average profitability look like in that specific area. So now that you have all that information, you come here. So let me share this. You can see my screen, yeah? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the next thing you want to do is to do a market sizing. And the market size also helps us understand how large is the opportunity, and does it actually make sense for us to play in this specific segment that we're looking at. So we have a figure called total available market, which is it can be a dollar amount, but it's mostly measured in terms of like money. Yeah. So for example, like in your case, Joy, if you wanted to do a total available market for any specific service that you're offering, whether it's family law, whether it's corporate law, whether it's commercial law, whatever law, you need to go back historically. I think maybe going back 3 years could be a good baseline to start with. And then within those 3 years, just try to see if you can get all the cases that have been litigated within that specific area. Yeah. And then now you do what we've talked about. So what is the frequency of the cases that actually are raised and actually go through the entire process in a year? Okay. When it comes to the settlement, how much on average? Look at the baseline, look at the median range, and then also look at the high range. Because now once you start deciding on which specific customer you're going to look at, then you can see the dollar amount or the value of market that you're actually going to go into. So that's kind of like just the overall figure that you're looking at. The next thing is more around the serviceable available market. So yes, you might want to do arbitration, you might want to do commercial law, but even within commercial law, like we've mentioned, it could be Merck and versus Peter, or it could be Unilever versus Colgate, it could be Johnson and Johnson versus wengine ni wagani? Any other company. Yeah. So depending on who you're going to target, then that also reduces the kind of customers that you could potentially get. So yes, the dollar amount for commercial cases might be, let's say, even 300 million or billion in Kenya shillings every year. But if I was to target the multinational corporates, then that means maybe they're not very many, but the dollar amount is still very high. But if they're not very many, then that means, let's say there are 50 multinationals in Kenya, then your serviceable available market becomes the 50. Yeah. So we've moved from 300 billion to now the 50. So now we want to see out of the 50, what is the obtainable one? So for example, of the 50 multinationals that we have, potentially they already have lawyers in retainer, who, whether it's either in an internal department or they have signed a third-party law firm. Potentially they already have those sorts of relationships. So maybe here what you could potentially try to also understand is when it comes to things like renewals, how often do they actually renew some of these contracts? Which ones are about to lapse? Then that tells you also, it gives you an indication of, out of the 50, maybe 15 of them are considering either renewing the contracts, or maybe they are deciding on whether they need to potentially change law firms. So that becomes your obtainable market. Yes, we had the 50, but maybe potentially we can only get 15. And then the 10% is now based on what the investments you're able to actually make to get out of the 15, how many you're able to convert. So this is now where we're saying, putting out your thought leadership pieces, sending out, I don't know, because now you've mentioned that you're not allowed to market. How do you get clients? Joy, maybe do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, so we are allowed to tender, so there is the tendering process. There is individual approach, where you
Okay.
you target a customer and you approach them, seek for like a individual kind of marketing. But the biggest source of clients is normally referrals. And that then makes it very hard for younger advocates, because you have no experience, you have no years of expertise. But for senior advocates now, they benefit from referrals because of referral can either come from your years of experience or from your level of expertise. And where you have both, you leverage on that better than on one end. So we are allowed to tender, and where possible, we tender for any open jobs. That's why even what you just said makes a lot of sense in terms of understanding like the serviceable, obtainable market. Most companies do empaneling of advocates probably annually, or some, depending on the nature of contracts, every 2 years. So we are not allowed to market at all, but we have these other modes where we're able to get clients. But the biggest is referrals for sure.
Yeah, I think content creation is fully allowed. I think as vile tu nani amesema, as long as you don't inaitwaje, explicitly have a call to action. Yeah. So maybe the call to action is the only thing that might be missing. But in terms of like just educating and positioning yourself, I think that should be very much okay.
Okay.
And I think the best way to also go about this is potentially looking at current events. Yeah. So, for example, inaitwaje? There was a ruling recently where the judge decided that it doesn't matter how long you stay with the quote unquote a spouse, as long as it wasn't like official, then you are still not entitled to, let's say, the properties of the man or the woman, depending on how you look at it. Kuna vitu kaa hizo. So usually unapata if there's a case that is also attracting a lot of high interest, that presents a lot of opportunity for you to actually be part of the conversation, just sharing your experience. It's a way for people to know your brand better than assuming if you are to just start pushing the content in yourself, because it means the person has to have been going through that issue specifically for that content to actually come up and for them to actually take note. So creating content is one part, but also the distribution of that content, getting it into the right eyes at the right time matters a lot, because you can create a lot of good content, but it stays hidden. So try to see what are the picks that might help you get more views. Is this part clear in terms of like how market sizing? Let me share an example of one I did in my recent masterclass. Kidogo tu.
Mark, as you share, I think in Africa, the main challenge we market researchers, like marketers, when we do market research, the challenge we face is unavailability of data to do this market sizing. I think that's the challenge I faced before. You have a client, you want to size the market, but there's no data outside there to help you come up with a solid figure for them. So that's been a challenge.
Okay, that's totally, it's totally understandable, and I think this is why also understanding research methods is very important, because you should still be able to come up with an estimate. So, for example, like for my case, when I was doing the e-commerce case study, yeah, I looked at a number of different indicators to be able to understand what could have been the potential market size of e-commerce back in 2013, 2017. Yeah. So I looked at consumer spending in Kenya over the years from 1999 to 2022. And then I also looked at when the first e-commerce brands started coming up in Kenya. So from this, we could see that in 2010, per capita spending was at around $995. And then in terms of like millions, was 33 million. Yeah. So you already have a figure in terms of like when it comes to moving goods and services in the market, this is how much was being spent during that year. And then the next thing that I'm going to look at now, okay, so I am an e-commerce platform. I want to, it means people are able to buy and purchase over the internet. Yeah. So the next thing for me is to actually understand how many people are actually connected to the internet in Kenya. Yeah. So looking at internet connectivity over the years, in 2010, we were about 7% of the population that was connected to the internet. So 7% out of the population of 42 million people that were there, we are getting about 2.9 million people. Yeah. So now we want to calculate the potential market size. We know that the per capita spending, which means how much is per each person. So if we were to divide all the money that was moved in the economy in 2010, we want to divide that against the number of the population, then that means every person in Kenya at least spent $995 in that year. So that is the spending that we are taking. Yeah, naeka kando hapo hivyo. And then now the population. So the population that is connected to the internet, the 2.9 million people, which is what I am potentially targeting. But another thing that we also know, not everybody is connected, who is connected to the internet might potentially be a good customer for us to pursue, kwa sababu kuna watu who are, they're just connected to the internet because maybe they can afford 10 MB, 20 MB and such like. So if you are just targeting people who can get 20 MB and 30, 40, 50 MB, potentially it means these people don't have a lot of money to spend. Yeah. So we remove those. So essentially what I did is now I looked at the middle class, because as a middle class, there is potential that maybe you have slightly more disposable income. So we're not taking everybody that has internet connectivity, but we're trying to see, can we actually get the market segment of people who might be a viable customer for the product and service that I want to offer. So at the time, the Africa Development Bank had placed the middle class in Kenya at 44%, which I believe to be a lie. Not a lie necessarily, but not very accurate because of the criteria, because they are saying it's anybody earning between 20,000 and I think upwards. But we do know that 20,000 in the Kenya economy is not quite good money. But for the sake of argument, we use that number. So 995 times the 2.9 million individuals, while only getting a 44% of this specific number. So that gives me the market size of 1.3 billion. So on one side, that is like we've now created the total available market. So if everybody who is connected to the internet and belongs to the middle class, and this is how much they're spending, if they were to spend this money on e-commerce, then this is how much the market is actually worth. But you can see even in the examples that we shared, for example, brands like how much these brands are actually making, you can see it's very far from the amounts that are available. We'll go to, let me get to the start. Yeah, so you can see, for example, a brand like Jumia, they only made 9 million USD last year, with the closest competitor making about 7.9 billion. So to go back to our term, SOM, and all these other things that we are currently learning, simply because there's a lot of revenue to be made in a specific domain, it doesn't mean that you're going to actually capture all that usage, which is why now you need to pick your customer very well, because that will also affect the activities you're going to do, which in turn is also going to affect how many of those customer segments you're actually able to capture. I don't know if now at least you have some bit of idea around how you could do a market research. Sometimes you can work with data that you can get from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. You can go through census data, but you'll need to actually create that sizing yourself.
Okay, that sounds good.
Nimekupoteza ama tuko
No,
sawa?
you've made sense. My worry is
Okay.
mostly for markets that are not like markets like okay, products that are creating categories in Africa. So a category that is new, like
Mhm.
sourcing data can be a bit of a challenge. But I get your point.
So maybe we do kidogo. Let me show you another example. So for example, let's pick umesema data
Yes.
kidogo. I'm trying to log into Google. Any question, Nini, as I'm doing that? Comments?
Philip joined the call. There's a person called Philip.
Oh, Philip amejoin sahi?
No, he joined at around 11:14.
Oh. Philip, hi.
Hi.
Nice to have you. You caught us when we were deep into it.
Yeah, I joined late. I was
Uh,
dealing with some clients here. So
okay.
I'll catch up with the rest of the session later.
Okay, sawa. But we've recorded the session, eh?
Yeah.
Kidogo. I know, Carol, I know you've used these tools, ndio?
Yeah.
Sawa. So there's a tool called there's a number of different things you can do if you want to have a potential understanding of how much the market size is. Yeah. So one of the tools personally I use is the ads platforms, so Google Ads, Facebook Ads, and all these others, but then also combining that with data that is actually available from research that's been done. So you can't just context is very important when you're looking at at the different data points that you are receiving, because if you only take data from one specific area, then sometimes you might find that you are missing the bigger picture. For example, even some of these research firms, you don't know who is sponsoring that research. You don't know what the objectives are, and it's very easy for you to be swayed. So usually when it comes to matters research, I always prefer for individuals or companies to try and also validate through their own data that they are seeing based on the customers. So one thing that we could also look at, ngoja kidogo. So Google Ads has a tool called Keyword Planner. So you come into Keyword Planner, and then you say get search volumes. Yeah. So for example, like in your case, you've said data. What would
No,
be
I
the
think
service?
the service would be medical communication. It's
Medical.
very, yeah, it targets medics like service providers in the healthcare industry. So neurosurgeons, it could be, I don't know, just like normal doctors.
What are we communicating? So what
So the
what is
tool, so the
Mhm,
tool is used by these practitioner, medical practitioners to
mhm,
communicate internally and organize
mhm,
their medical data. So let's say, for example,
mhm,
you, Mark, get sick, you go
mhm,
to, I don't know, which hospital, one of the hospitals in Kenya,
mhm,
and then you get treated. And the next time you're in a different town, you go to a different service provider, then they can be able to
mhm,
exchange in like information about
okay,
Mark. Yeah,
mhm,
so that's let me give you a link of the company. They're called Tibalink. It's still
mhm.
in the development stages. So that's a company I'm doing market research for.
All right,
Just
so
understanding how big the market is.
mm,
Yeah.
sawa kidogo tu, mi bado niko kwa keyword planner. I'll look at it so I think I understand what you're trying to say. So, for example, if it's different, maybe hospitals, ama if it's different locations, if your records are in one specific area, then that means with the solution that's provided, it's still possible for another doctor in another area to actually be able to get that information. Is that the solution?
Yeah. So I think keywords would be medical communication,
Mm-hmm.
medical data, healthcare
Mm-hmm.
data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's huge. Like other continents do this, but in
mm.
Africa we need our own solution.
But sasa in Africa, what you could potentially look at, what I'm thinking, every hospital has their own system, yeah, that they're using.
Yeah,
So,
but
for
most
example,
of those systems are built. Most
mm-hmm,
of those systems they're using systems from outside the country. You know,
mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
US. So even if you sort of visit a doctor,
mm-hmm,
sometimes it becomes even an issue for them to enter your data, blah blah blah. Because Africans are very different compared to
mm-hmm,
a
mm-hmm.
persona in Africa is different from a persona in the US. So they're
Okay,
using tools from outside the continent, and they're not working.
which is very okay. So, remember for us, yeah,
Yeah.
we are trying to size the market.
Yes.
So bado usiingie usually, and I think this is another mistake that entrepreneurs make, yeah,
Mm.
where you've fallen so in love with your solution that you're not like really scanning and understanding what are the market dynamics. So, for example, like you
Mm.
said,
Mm.
in Kenya, for you, your solution is medical data. You want to make medical data and healthcare data accessible across the board, sindio?
Yeah.
But it's a new what's it called?
Category.
It's a new category. So if
Mm.
it's a new category, it means that nobody is searching for these things. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
But as a hospital, I know that I am looking for enterprise management systems, because I know I need to manage inventory. I need to have a database on my customers. I need to maybe have a timesheet of my doctors. And I also need to maybe manage the records of patients. Yeah. That we know for sure. Hospitals
Yeah.
in Kenya, whatever system they are using, we know they have that information. They are using softwares at any given
Mm-hmm.
point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to understand which softwares they're using. So, for example, when we're looking at Porter's 5 forces, yeah, we talked about ini substitutes. Yeah, currently there are substitutes that are fulfilling that need, with the only challenge being that because each hospital is using its own unique solution, then it becomes difficult to pass that information. But because you know that there are softwares that these hospitals are already using, what are some examples of those softwares? Do you have examples?
Oh, I just know their ERPs.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten their specific names.
Yeah. So that is another thing that you do. So
Mm.
put yourself in the shoes of the market and what they are currently doing. So you want to use the search terms that they are using na nini hizo vitu zote. So for me, if I was an IT person in a hospital, maybe I'd be looking at hospital ERPs, hospital MIS, whatever. And then actually, if you can have the brand names specifically zenye unajua wanatumia, have them there. And then you just do nini, you create. Okay, interesting. So healthcare data, average 10 to 100. You can see my screen, guys, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so 10 to 100, hospital ERP. You see, ERP, 10 to 100. Hospital management information system, 10 to 100. So if we do, yeah. And another thing we also need to consider when it comes to, what's it called? These Google planners, they only share information for people who are connected to the internet. Yeah. So this is not also representative of the whole population. So that is also something that we need to take into account. Yeah. Whenever you're using this information, it doesn't necessarily like paint the entire picture. But at least now I know that there are about 10 to 100 people every month who are looking for solutions around how to manage healthcare data, nini nini hizo vitu zote. Yeah. So we could potentially take that as it's a small market, but I guess it makes sense because also the number of hospitals that would need this level of detail maybe haziko mingi hivyo. Could that be correct?
Yeah.
Exactly, because maybe the big hospitals probably they're not very many. Maybe tukisema hizo, I don't know if it's level 1, level 2, but maybe potentially they're not the clinics tuko nazo mingi, but in
Yeah.
terms of like easy hatuna. So now for you,
Mm.
based on what you're already seeing, yeah, because it's a new product and it's a new it's a new industry altogether, what you can now decide to see to look at is now, number one, do you have a map of, let's say, all clinics in Kenya? How many of them are there? Put that number somewhere. Then you also look at the levels of hospitals. I don't know. I think they're up to 4 levels, if I'm not wrong. But at each level, how many are actually there? Yeah. And then now you make a decision on who you want to target first. Do you want to start at the bottom of the pyramid with the clinics, or do you want to start with the hospitals themselves? And then now, when it comes to the value of your product, remember we talked about when we were talking about value creation, we looked at the price, which is what you're going to charge for it based on all the services and costs that you've been able to incur up until this point. We looked at the gain, which is the perceived goodwill that the customer is going to get when they make to your when they move over to your solution. And then the final thing that we also talked about was the pain, which is the cost of purchase. So, for example, if these big level hospitals, they already have systems that they're using, yeah, and you're coming up with a new solution, there's a pain associated with adopting your solution because number one, they have to do fresh training of the employees. That's going to cost time and money. Number two, they need to either archive or migrate their data points. That also requires, it causes some pain to them. And then now, I don't know what else they have to go through to actually adopt your solution, but those are some potential reasons why a customer might actually say no to your solution. So you want to ensure that by the time you're going to talk, because there are not many, if there are 100, by the time you're going to reach out to the 100, the value proposition needs to be very clear, and you already need to have answers for some of those questions, because that can affect the number that you're able to capture. So
Yeah. And then the other pain we are anticipating is government interference in terms of where do we house these medical data for, like, who's
so
going to be the host of the
so hao ni
medical
wakina
information. Yes.
hao ni wakina Joy na compliance na
Yeah.
nini. Yeah, so hizo litigation, you nini, risk analysis, you do all those different things. You try to see what are the regulations, because in the business environment, political, environmental, social, technological, legal, all those things, they actually affect whether your business is going to survive or not. So you need to look at it's we've just done one part, value analysis. Unaona sasa kuna hii part ya pestel pia,
Yeah.
situational analysis, and then sasa kuna hii part sasa ya market sizing also, because that also affects the things that you're going to prioritize, whether it's product features ama nini. It depends on the customer you're going to target and who you're going to prioritize as you're going to do that.
Yeah.
We are at time. What is missing kidogo? So at least you've seen how I have combined, let's say, search data and also, let's say, research data. Research data by, for example, like how many clinics do we have in Kenya? Where are they distributed? Levels of hospitals, and then now looking at, okay, comparing that with what people are looking at. And if it's under the 100, it might not necessarily be that there's a low market for that specific solution. It could be just because it's new. And if it's new, people are not searching for it. So that means also in the go-to-market activities you're going to do, it's going to look quite different to, let's say, if it was a product that is already, people already know, and they're already actively searching for it. So it's better to actually validate with doing your own research, understanding who are the players, where they are, how can I categorize them, and then now from those characteristics, you can see now we are moving from how many hospitals are in Kenya? We have maybe 20. How many clinics are in Kenya? How many people do they treat on a regular basis? This data should be available. I think Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, potentially they have a lot of data on all these areas. Just go and look, and then now try to, based on your product offering and your areas of focus, you find that you're now going to start to narrow down to your different audiences, and then now the initiatives you'll implement will come from that. I wanted us to look at an example of how to do persona research. We could have done it with Joy's example, but I think we are at time. So do we continue next time, ama do we take a stab?
I think I'm good to continue until 12:30. I don't know what's the other thing.
Watu wamenyamaza.
Sorry, I think we can proceed. You're saying we proceed to 12:30, or what have I had?
Yeah, we can do until 12:30
I think
if
for
we
me, we
want
just
to.
complete the session.
We complete the session, yeah? Hello?
Yeah, we can complete the session.
Okay, sawa.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I think Nini, feedback. Let's review today's session. Do we need to go into this topic again? Have I given you guys some things to think about? Yeah, let me hear. I'll need feedback from Nini, because usually najua knowing the theory is one aspect, but actually going in and doing the work is where the challenges come up. So at least, have I given you a nice place to start with? I'll want to hear from everybody. Yeah?
Yeah.
Caroline.
Yes, so I can go first. So I love the breakdown you gave Joy. She's in the service industry, I'm in the service industry, so you can use the same thinking. That's for me as a consultant, but I also love the breakdown you've given me when it comes to market sizing for a particular product. So I'll come back to this recording and think through things. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll also try to prepare templates that I can share with you.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Peter. Peter, please unmute and speak. All right, Joy, maybe you can go ahead.
I must say I have benefited a lot from this session, and it was very practical, and I love something that is practical as opposed to purely theoretical. So you have given us enough homework to think about and practicalize. My question though is, when we are at the point of generating the data and statistics, the things you have mentioned, do you do consultancy in the same, such that if you are to be engaged to now process the actual data, you're able to hold our hands and
Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't teach anything different to what I deliver to my clients. So, for example, like if I was doing this work with you, Ama, if you'd consulted me to kind of like help you review the product strategy and just the organizational strategy in general, these are the things that I would actually get into, making it a bit more practical and actually now doing the research ourselves. So, for example, even if it's law firms, we can get into the details. I make it a point to try to understand my client's exact scenario and also exact customer, just so that at least we know we can make the right inferences from the information we're looking at. So yes, that is something that I do provide.
Thank you.
Okay. Peter said he needs some time to go and digest today's session, so that's very much okay. Paul, I think you found, Philip, you found us in the middle. I don't know what you've been able to capture so far. Maybe you can just unmute and speak kidogo.
Okay. Oh, personally, I'm very new in this space, so that's why I joined the space, just to get an overview of what happens in the industry. I'm looking maybe one day in the near future to join the consultancy industry. So I believe whatever I'm gaining from here will go a long way in for me to establish provide me a better foundation in building my skill set. So far, so good. Thank you.
Awesome, Peter. Knowledge compounds over time. So yes, you might be new, but the time you're investing to actually bring yourself up to speed, it will serve you in the long run. So just stay hungry, keep looking for knowledge, and let's keep exchanging as well. Sawa. Cool. So we'll end it here. Once the video finishes rendering, I'll upload it onto the Classroom Drive. And then I'll see if I can put some templates together that we can use in our different businesses to try and understand how to do a market sizing, persona validation, as well as what's it called? Industry structure. Yeah, because it's important for us to understand average prices, average costs, depending on the activities we choose to do, so that we can now make better decisions on the structure of our operations. Yeah, because you might be delivering a really good service, but maybe if the market is only able to charge a certain rate, it means there's already a cap on what the percentages might look like for your business. So it's very important to have that view. We have very good product developers and product designers, but without the revenue element in terms of just understanding how a business makes money, then it becomes difficult to be a sustainable business. So those are some of the concepts that we will continue to look into. Next week, we'll still do a bit of persona mapping. And then now we'll get into now from a business perspective. So we'll look at viability, desirability, and what's it called? Feasibility. So in case you want to pivot or you want to make different decisions for your business, this is the place that we'll learn more around how to do that. Sawa. Thank you guys for the feedback. Wishing you a restful weekend. See you next week on Friday. 2 more classes to go.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good one.